the public image of the Native American Indian is something that does not correspond to the reality of the lives.
I think people have preferred the romantic vision of the Indian, the warrior. Either you get two sides of the spectrum. You get the warrior image, or you get the dumb, drunk Indian, and not a lot in between. So what I was trying to do in the book is to really expand on what it means to be native living now. You get a lot of historical images. You get feathered and headdressed. And while I have those in the book, I try to approach the very idea of putting on regalia as something that is questioned.
Tell me something about the virtues of the pan-Indian society and culture.
I think there's a tendency to be more communal thinking, and the American consciousness and Western ways are much more individual. If there was any difference, it's that one. It's taking care of community and seeing yourself as part of a community as opposed to an individual.
And can these virtues serve as a way of living, as a different way? Is it even something that might attract the other parts of the society?
I mean, it's not likely that 2% of any population is going to influence in any significant way 98% of the population. But, you know, there are ways that we can influence through art, and I have hope that there are ways that we influence, but I don't know how much to hope for in terms of on any big scale. In terms of a crisis, I don't know who can make a change. Right now it seems a little bit hopeless.
Can you tell me what is a powwow?
For somebody it might be a part of their spiritual journey, and they might, you know, bring a prayer to the dance and dance that way and take it very seriously. Somebody else might be a goofy powwow MC who's cracking jokes the whole time and is doing it because he gets paid pretty good to do it, and he has the gift of gab maybe, and he knows powwows well and grew up that way, so he can just kind of run his mouth. Somebody might really just want to be making money by making fry bread and selling Indian tacos, or artwork or jewelry. You know, families might go because another family that they know is going, and it's, you know, a place to gather. So it really depends on who you ask. There's no definitive, this is what powwows mean.
One of your characters in the book finds a traditional costume at home, and he decides to go to the powwow using this one. But he's also at the same time afraid of disguising as an American Indian, as a native person.
Well, it's, you know, to be an authentic native person living now, part of it is questioning your authenticity. And so anytime you're putting on feathers, I think you have to wonder, am I performing my Indianness or am I being my Indianness? And I think it's just something natural that comes with anything that's not the dominant culture and not normalized that way. You're sort of putting on airs, so to speak, or you know, you might be self-conscious about that. Even if it's the real thing, you might go through that kind of doubt.
In Dort, German title, you deconstruct American values, you deconstruct American holy values, like, for example, the Thanksgiving. Suddenly, when I read your book, Thanksgiving has a completely different meaning.
Nobody really wants to say that they're acknowledging the true history. They want to acknowledge the fake one and just kind of surfacey one, and keep on eating turkey and gravy.
What was the true history of Thanksgiving?
Well, the first one, it had to do with a land deal. But all the ones after that were related to celebrating massacres. Not a lot of people talk about that. The story that we hear in school is that the Pilgrims and Indians got along, or that the Indians taught them how to survive, and everyone happily ever after. And it just was not that. That was not the case at all. Yeah.
Is that something that troubles you, that haunts you?
Sure, and I think, you know, I express it in the prologue in a pretty clear, angry way. It's, you know, it's not just this history. It's a lot of history is sterilized, and if you want to make the citizens of a nation obedient, you want them to be proud of the history. You can't really, I mean, that's the way it was. It's getting better now, but but it's been, you know, it's a history of sterilization of history, or just downright lies that celebrate something that's not true.
What is the basis for abuse?
Yeah, I think historically, not just Native people, but a lot of people who experience drug addiction and homelessness, and you know, these are all symptoms of systematic things. And so historically it's sort of been put on Native people that they have a weakness for alcohol, for example. But you know, it's really just because it's cheap and it's legal and it's right there, and they, you know, they build more liquor stores in ghettos, for example, and this is the rates of alcoholism in black communities can be higher, and has been, or drug abuse in either one of those communities. And if you look at both histories, it's no accident that people end up, you know, you have great grandparents that raised parents, and all of these wounds that are caused by systematic violence and direct violence, they get carried on. If things aren't healed, or things don't get resolved, they carry on. And privilege comes from, you know, people having things nice, and that carrying on in generations as well.
Is this one of the reasons why your book is so very well received also within the Native American community?
Yeah, I think it could be. I don't know that I could say that that's what's happening, but certainly, you know, seeing your stories represented on the page in literature where we usually don't necessarily show up, I think it does do something inside. Healing might be a strong word.
What is the 21st century Native American Indian and its role?
Well, I think there was just such an absence and void of not only Native people living in cities, but contemporary Native people living contemporary lives. I'm resisting the idea that we're mystical, or, you know, all these tropes like warrior and mystic and connected to the land. And I from living in it and growing up in it and working in the community, I just saw that it was so much more. And that, while that might seem obvious to a lot of Native people, it's not obvious to the outside. So maybe I was trying to just counteract a lot of the images that they're damaging, to only think of people as historical, or to meet up to the standards of the outside gaze. You have to fall into the stereotype to be authentic. That's really problematic.
You are also critical about legendary historic figures of the Native and American history, like Geronimo, like Sitting Bull. What is your view of these legendary people, figures nowadays?
Geronimo and Sitting Bull, and a lot of these guys went to Buffalo Bill's Wild West show and were paid to be Indians. They were paid to perform a very specific kind of Indianness for the outside. And these are, like, you know, things that people don't generally know. And so if I'm against anything, it's just this, you know, this obnoxious stereotype that's usually summed up in somebody like Geronimo or Sitting Bull, this stoic, serious warrior, that kind of thing.
In this respect, do you think history is a burden or an opportunity, the awareness of history?
It's a burden if you see that it's an institutionalized lie that's not really being questioned. It's an opportunity if you're teaching it in a way that counteracts a lot of the lies that have been taught.
What do you see as the opportunity? Is it correcting a picture, or is it creating something new?
I think it's both. I think in the correction, it's a creation of something new. It's a new way to think, to put a lens on the American history with a different, from a Native perspective, or just a correct perspective. I mean, I don't think any historians who really study actual history is going to disagree with a lot of what Native people think. But if you ask a Republican, you're going to get a whole mouthful of lies. They want to keep America pure and great again, because it's part of their rhetoric and it's part of the narrative that they tell themselves, that the country's that it's, you know, this thing that it never was.
Has anger been for you a source of energy and of writing, for writing the book? Is it a creative thing, anger?
Yeah, I think so. I think it fuels me. When I get mad, I think I can, when I get mad about something, it feels like it comes from the same place as passion. That's not to say the whole book was fueled by anger, but I can use it as a source of inspiration to write.